CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. Today, my guest is Eden Gold, and we titled her podcast, Fearlessly Chase Your Dreams. Thank you for coming on today, Eden.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I can't wait to get right into this. So
I know,
let's
me
do
too.
it.
When you approached me about your story, I was just heartbroken, number one, but then excited because you're transforming something that could be very painful and detrimental, and you're transforming it into something amazing. So we'll start with, can you kind of explain the reasoning behind the title, Fearlessly Chase Your Dreams?
Yeah. It's crazy that you bring that up in the way that you did, because for one, I'm a youth speaker. I speak in high schools, colleges, and I gave this one presentation, and halfway through me sharing my story, which I'm sure we'll get into, I asked if anyone had questions. And this one young lady was like, I thought you were going to come in and speak about computers or like something, but that just made me cry. And
Aww.
it's crazy how people have this idea of who you are, what you do. People stereotype me a lot because I'm a young white woman. And that can bring up whatever kind of ideas for anyone. But to get back to your question, the reason why this is a title is because I certainly did not have that great of a childhood in terms of going to school. I was bullied. I had some severe trauma that I never dealt with, eating disorders, the whole 9 yards, which we can break down in a moment too. And it was through my recovery from those things that I realized there are so many gaps in the education system. There are so many things that we are not taught to set us up for success in our 20s and for the rest of our lives. And so that allows for sick adults with addictions, adults with abusive habits and destructive habits towards themselves. So in chasing our dreams, we're taking it all the way back down to the basics. We are learning how to create lifelong and sustainable habits so we can thrive in our life.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of school systems are kind of cutting back their funding. Well, they're keeping sports, which is great, and they're focusing on academics, which is great, but they're cutting out the arts. And to me, that's heavily detrimental for people who, their strength is not athletic, their strength is not academic, but their strength is art. And it's also probably their vice. And so, that's what they go to kind of express in a healthy way what's going on. And if they can't do that, that's going to hurt them in the long run.
And schools don't recognize what's really going on and what needs to take precedence over another thing. The high school I went to, my stepdad is a volleyball coach there. The whole gym just got redone a couple years ago. I walk in that gym the other day, everything is repolished and redone. What is it, like a $50,000 project? And I was talking to my stepdad about it, like, why would they do this? They just redid it. Why not put that money towards different activities, extracurricular activities, mental health clubs, student body, whatever.
Home ec. I mean, you guys don't have home ec anymore. So people are graduating not really knowing how to cook. I didn't know how to cook.
I didn't take that class. When you said that, I'm like thinking,
sewing, cooking. Yeah, all of that stuff is considered home ec, and that's not being taught anymore.
It's no secret that schools kill creativity. It really isn't. But a lot of kids also aren't learning these creative practices by their families, because families are stressed out. They work full time. So
both parents, if they have them, or single parents if they don't. But all of them, like you said, they're working, they're not at home. So who's teaching the kids these?
School is a kid's full-time job. And if they're not getting what they actually need to succeed, what are they left with? Here's what they're left with. Going out into the deep end, facing a problem, and just having to figure it out. What do you do when your car breaks down on the side of the road? I bet 80% or more the high school to college age students don't know how to change a tire. Like, it's not even just mental health and creativity. It's life skills that will help the rest of your life that we're lacking.
Balancing a checkbook. What's a checkbook? I thought we have a credit card. You do realize that has interest. What's interest? Well, that's what you have to pay back. All of this stuff is not in there anymore. Well,
no, go ahead. Continue. Go for it.
I was going to say, speaking of your story, The Journey is Real is also about the journey. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time for that. So can you back us up a little bit and kind of bring us forward along in your journey to where you are now? That way we're connecting the two ends.
Yeah, totally. So I was born in Hawaii. I was born into a military family, and my dad
Mhm.
was stationed on the island of Oahu. When I was 2, my parents divorced, and my mom took me, my brother, and my sister, and we went to California to be with my mom's family in California. So I've pretty much been in California my whole life. Every year, oh, my dad was then stationed in Georgia, so every year we would fly back and forth, Georgia, California, Georgia, California, and it's all that I knew.
Mhm.
It was my version of normal, although, a lot of people might argue that that's far from normal, but you only know what you know, you
Mhm.
know? And
Well,
so
I grew up on my bread. I get it. It's like you move all the time. And so to you, that's normal. And
yeah,
unfortunately, with all of that movement, you don't make a lot of heavy connections.
100%.
Mhm.
And all of this went on until I was 10. And when I was 10 years old, my father went to prison on a life sentence without parole. So to this day, he has no release date. And what I, you can understand how that would completely turn my world around. Yes, I was closer to my mom, but I still loved my dad. And for
Mhm.
10 years, I didn't know what was going on. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I decided I need to do my own research. Why isn't anyone giving me answers as to why my dad has been in prison for 12 years? Why? Like, I've seen him 4 times since his incarceration, and it's just something that I got used to.
Mhm.
Right? I just got used to it. And looking back now, I spent a lot of time really angry, angry at the justice system because he went to prison on circumstantial evidence, which means that there was not a single piece of DNA linking him to the case that he was accused of. So that alone really upsets me because he's getting life without the possibility of parole. He's serving like 2 life sentences. So you can understand how frustrating it has been
Yeah.
over years not having answers. And then I would also get mad at people who were taking advantage of the fact that they had parents, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, at least you have a dad. Um, and then I had to realize over time, as I gained more knowledge, that I take advantage of the fact that I can see out of both eyes.
Mhm.
I take advantage of the fact that I can walk with both legs.
Mhm.
We're always going to take advantage to a degree the things that we have, and we don't know what it's like to not have them.
Mhm.
And that's one of the lessons that I try and stress upon people is happiness and grace and being kind to one another because you really don't know what someone else has gone through.
Well, and you don't know what you don't know until you realize that it's not there.
Exactly. And I couldn't do anything about it. So I was completely powerless. But as a young person, I didn't have the tools that I needed to effectively cope with negative emotions. Like if someone told me that, I'd be like, what the heck are you talking about?
What does that mean?
Yeah, effective coping mechanisms. What? Like that's crazy. And so my job now is to try and teach young people, like break it down into very simple components as to how we
Mhm.
can begin to prioritize our mental health.
Mhm.
Because as a result of my dad going to prison, I grew very insecure. My body image insecurities, which I believe stemmed from me blaming myself and saying, well, there's something wrong with me. Oh, I'm ugly. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. I developed very severe bulimia for 6 years. I was sexually assaulted when I was in high school, all as a direct result of not being confident, not knowing how to say no, standing up for myself. And it's kind of a ripple effect. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of people can relate to this whole ripple effect and not being able to identify the problem.
Mhm.
Uh, so a lot of things took place in my younger years that I didn't realize until long after. And it's so important for young people to know.
Well, and a lot of times when you're going through trauma, you kind of block it because your body itself kicks into survival mode as an adult. As a child or as a teen, your hormones are all over the place. You're chemically imbalanced because of the hormones, but you've got so much going on. You've got body image issues. You've got social media now. You've got friendships. You've got moving around. You've got the rumor mill. I mean, there is so much, and kids can take anything, any little thing. I was a youth group leader for 18 years. They can take any little thing and make it a big thing. And
Yeah.
that big thing gets bigger and bigger, and people get ostracized for something they don't even have control over.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't make the connections between this painful experience and us breaking a nail in class, right? We don't understand how we are just in this reactive mode, reactive zone
Mhm.
because we're experiencing so much pain but don't have an avenue to release that pain because a lot of the way that parents teach and what I've seen over the past 3 years and working with teens and parents is uh, parents want to protect. They
Mhm.
want to protect, they want to keep you from doing things when the truth is our peer influences are the number one influences in our lives when we're growing up. So half of the things that you say as a parent, it's going to go right over your teen's head.
Mhm.
So the more that you try and say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, the more they're going to do it and not tell you about it. So open communication is huge as well. And it's not something that I had with my family because my brother is a drug addict and he has been for 10 years. And so my mom was like, no, curfew this, can't do this, can't do that. God forbid I ever find out that you ever did anything. So um, I snuck out. I snuck out. I did drugs. I stole alcohol from stores at 4 a.m. during the winter. Like, and my parents never even knew because I would sneak back in by 4 a.m. But I'm telling you right now, I got in a lot of situations where I very much could have died via being in a car with a drunk driver or things like that. So in conclusion with that thought is if I'm telling or trying to encourage a parent to have like open communication with a teen,
Mhm.
even though the parent themselves might not have gotten themselves into a situation where they could have died, or even if they did, it doesn't matter. um it's okay to instill a little bit of fear into your teen.
Mhm.
It's okay to instill a little bit of fear, but mixed with compassion when you're trying to encourage them what to do and how to make the right steps. So
I
if
see
you
parents a lot of times trying to be the child's best friend. And it's like, or they're trying to tell them what to do as opposed to explaining why they do what they do. As a youth leader, I liked the junior high group. A lot of the youth leaders were like, they drive me crazy. They're always asking why. To
yeah,
me, I loved that they asked why, because before that point, they're being told what to do. And so they just do it. Junior high age, they're kind of starting to ask, why am I doing this? So they're starting to form that thought process. I encourage them, ask me why. Why did I tell you this? Why am I explaining this to you? Because I would rather tell you those steps now. So you're learning the thought processes. So when you hit high school, because it's going to get worse in high school, that thought process can be moving through your brain.
and my theory in relation to that that has been kind of proven time and time again, so I'm pretty sure I'm spot on with this, is there's a lack of storytelling between
Mhm.
parents and their kids. Parents want to again protect their kids, so they're not telling them, hey, I went through this before, I went through
Mhm.
this heartbreak before, here's what I did to overcome it. They're just saying, oh, like, what can I do to help, blah blah blah. But so a kid, we're thinking, I'm not going to tell you because what do you know? You've never been there. You don't get it. You just don't understand. And parents are like, I don't want to tell them that I ever did drugs because then they might think it's okay to do it. No, you're creating a bond that allows them to be safe and can save so many lives.
Mhm.
So many lives with this open form of communication. And it's so simple. Share stories with your teen. And if you
Mhm.
think it's going to drive them to doing something bad because you did, so I can, that's when you bring in some bam, statistics, bam, facts. Did you know that even though I got in a car with a drunk driver and I survived, there is a 40% chance I would have died that night? That's what's gonna help them realize, bring it back into a reality check. I live, but you could die.
Mhm.
You know what I
Well,
mean? And I
and then there's also that open communication line, period. My teens knew that they could tell me anything and it would stay between us unless it was against the law or a safety issue.
mhm.
Those are the two things that I would go to directly make them go with me to their parent. And there are some issues that we found out, cutting, eating disorders, stuff that's hidden that they can hide very easily because most of those are control issues. A lot of times teens don't feel like they have control over anything. Teachers are telling them what to do. Parents are telling them what to do. Nobody's telling them why. They're just telling them don't do it or do this and don't do that. And so they're like going, who do I listen to? Why am I listening to them? They don't know anything. They were perfect growing up. And it's like, no, actually, they weren't.
Yeah, and that's why I feel so called to do this work now. And I'm so happy that I discovered it at an earlier age. I'm in my early 20s, because again, on top of the lack of storytelling and inability for a young person to relate to a parent, I was there not that long ago. Okay, I'm 23, going to be 24, close to 24 at the time of
Mhm.
the launch of this episode specifically. I know what they're hiding behind closed doors. I know what they don't want to share with their family members. And to be honest, sometimes you need a third party to come in and bring a fresh new
Mhm.
perspective. It just is what it is. It's never anything personal against a parent, but there is a lot going on in a young person's mind. So when you say, why won't you just do the dishes? Why won't you just take your dishes out of your room, for example?
Mhm.
There, it's not that they don't want to help, but all they hear is you nagging at them because they have so much going on that you don't even know about, because
Mhm.
there might be some form of broken communication there. So what's simple to you doesn't make any sense to them, and what makes perfect sense to them, you're not understanding either. It's like this ripple effect, and that's why I'm such an advocate for teens having mentors and motivational speakers coming into schools and giving young people a sense of hope,
Well,
because
and
no
there
mental health in school.
exactly, and there's a lot of things to consider as well. They could be speaking the wrong love language. You know, there's 5 love languages. My birth mother, I was adopted, so my birth mother, her love language was gifts. Mine was physical. So I needed the hugs. I wasn't getting it. She was giving me gifts. So to me, that was bribery. So it's
Yeah.
like, are you speaking the same language? And it's not your language you need to speak, it's their language you need to speak. I needed the hugs. I
Yeah.
didn't need the gifts. I didn't want the gifts. And so it's like, are they speaking the same language? What's going on? What are they not telling you is going on social media? Because in the olden days, I'm going to date myself, before social media, you know, we could escape a lot of the bullying by going home.
Mhm.
You can't escape that now. It's on your phone. These phones are attached to people and they're always reading social media. And you never know if they're getting bullied through social media, because that happens so often and it's so easy for somebody to do to somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that brings the question, so you're telling me all of this stuff, like, what do I do? What do I
Mhm,
do? Maybe you're a parent watching this, so if I'm speaking on behalf of that, I would recommend everybody just take a little bit of time to check out the 5 love languages. It's a
mhm.
book. I'm sure there's, maybe, like, videos on it as well. Um, it basically
Chapman is the author.
who is?
Chapman, his last name is Chapman.
And do you kind of have, like, a brief summary of, like, how it
Basically,
works?
it's actually called The Five Love Languages.
Mhm.
Um, I can't remember his first name, but Chapman's a last name. But
Okay.
they are physical, which is hugs, kisses, holding hands. Just like I said, just a simple sitting beside each other. There's quality time and quantity time, which are kind of one and the same. But quantity time is more, you know, just pretty much working on the car, doing whatever. Quality time is, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to talk to you, and we're going to have some bonding time. There's I always forget them. There's words of affirmation. Sometimes people words cut. Sometimes people need those words. When you do, it's like, okay, who is like your cheerleaders are probably your words of affirmation people, because they're always trying to cheer somebody up. And I'm not talking specific cheerleaders, but the cheerleader friend, the encourager. Theirs is probably words of affirmation because that's what they need the most. That's probably what they're giving the most. There's
Yeah.
also letters, you know, notes that falls under words of affirmation. There's, oh golly, I always forget one. Um, Gifts, what we said, gifts was one, and then acts of service is another. So like my husband just had surgery. We have a friend who's coming and he mows the lawn for us, which is huge for us, but to him that's an act of service. That's him showing us love. And so it could be simple as doing the dishes. It could be making a meal. It could be, okay, you know what, I see that you're busy, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this for you so that you don't have to do it. And so you have to figure out what your child has, what is their love language. Because if they're pouring out, if they're getting battered left and right at school, even at home and social media and whatnot, they got to get that love tank filled back up in their language, not yours.
You know what? You made me think of 2 things. Well, the first, in summary, everyone has a specific kind of, like, thing that
Mhm,
really speaks to them.
mhm.
And so my recommendation, and I don't know if you're sponsored by the book. I'm certainly not sponsored by the
No.
book, but
Nope.
we are recommending it as something that can bring you and your kid together.
Mhm,
Read the book, kind of discover what is it that speaks to you the most. What can I do for you? Because a parent, and this happened with my stepdad, he paid for my car insurance, and we had
mhm.
a lot of problems when I was an adult. Like, you weren't there, and he was like, "I paid your car insurance," but a kid is
Gifts.
not thinking financially.
Mhm.
I'm thinking emotionally. I wanted those hugs because my dad's in
Mhm.
prison and I did not have that. And he was not that kind of stepdad to me.
Mhm.
So I felt like I was lacking that male figure in my life. So
Well,
maybe
and sometimes for physical, because mine is physical, the way I grew up in an abusive situation. So when I met my husband, the first few times, his parents, I would freeze when they hugged me because I was like, what is this? This is foreign. I like this, but I don't know what to do with it. And
yeah.
so just because they don't initially respond to it, find out what it is, kind of keep going at it until you figure out which one it is that is their love language.
That's a great point. And I've also heard a lot of parents say, like, oh, my kid's not going through anything. They're not. Trust me. I have a lot of conversations with
Every child is going through something, I promise you.
me. I was not that popular in student government kid. I was
Mhm,
a person that like everyone knew, but like no one talked to. So
mhm,
people would say hi, but I had no deep connections. And
mhm,
now that I'm an adult and now that I've built my business, I have people who used to be popular and I still get nervous when I like see them for some reason because I'm like, oh my God, you used to be so cool.
mhm,
But having conversations with them now and having multiple of them open up to me in who we are as adults and having this communication, they were insecure too.
mhm,
They just had more friends, but they were insecure. So you might think that your kid is like all good and dandy, but we're all going through stuff.
mhm,
We really are. So I would recommend trying to find ways to form that better communication via through like a book club like this. And look, they might think it's lame or whatever, but they think half the books they read in English class is lame. So mm, why not schedule a time to kind of do something like this? Because people have had incredible results with doing an activity as a family together to bring them together. And they might even learn stuff about themselves in the process that, people like us never got the chance to learn because mental
mhm,
health wasn't a rising industry topic at the time.
mhm. Well, and they're gonna buck you. They're going to say, "I don't want to do this. This is stupid. I'm stuck going out with my family, whatnot." But secretly, they probably like it.
Um,
Give them some time.
I read an article recently and it was, I don't remember what website it was, but it was kids want parents to be like a potted plant.
Mhm,
Even though they might not give you affection, they might not like even talk to you, they might not give you what you want, and so you might be feeling like you're failing as a parent. What your kid needs is for you to be there.
mhm.
They need a sense of stability, like a potted plant in your house, just there. They
They
know
need
you're there.
oxygen because plants give oxygen.
I'm like getting chills thinking about it because it made so much sense. They're
Mhm.
not always going to open up to you, but if they know that you're there when my mom's in the same room as me, different, like way better energy than when I'm like struggling and I'm alone. Even if I don't want to talk to her about it, like having your parent right there,
Mhm,
consider that you're not failing as a parent just because they're not telling you what's going on.
mhm.
They need a sense of stability and knowing you're there is great.
Exactly. Well, before we have only a little bit, actually, we're kind of right on time.
Okay.
But there's a couple things I want to hit really fast. You have a webinar that's going to be out by the time this airs. What is it and where can people find it?
Yeah, so the webinar is going to be on October 5th, but eventually we're going to turn it into a thing where it's going on all the time.
Mhm,
Um, it's called Seven Secrets of Success School Never Taught Teens, and it's really a roadmap of success for teens and 20 somethings.
mhm.
The webinar may or may not be available by the time of the airing of this podcast, but what will be available is my online program, Life After High School, dedicated to helping teens and young adults navigate their 20s by bridging the gap between what we're taught in school and what we actually need to be successful.
Mhm.
Right? So our slogan is a mentor in your back pocket, having a mentor
Nice.
in your back pocket for young people. And it's, oh my God, I'm so excited for it.
I'm
It's going to
excited
come out.
for you. That sounds, there's a lot of things that are missing. It's like we said, parents, either single parents or both parents are working.
Yeah.
And a lot of homes don't have that parent at home to teach them how to check their oil, how to change their tire, how to do their checkbook. What is a credit card? Oh my gosh, I got to pay it back. What's a student
Yeah.
loan? How does that work? You know, they need this stuff taught to them and they're not being taught cooking. Like I said, I went and I worked in restaurants to learn how to cook because I didn't know how to cook. I went and worked in a housekeeping job because I didn't know how to clean. And
Yeah.
so that taught me stuff that should have been taught growing up. So a lot of times when he has a program like what you're talking about, they need that little extra. Here you go. This is the information for you.
Yeah. The program is launching on November 17th, but it
Mhm.
will be active and running by the time this podcast is launched as well. And by that time, we will have gone through so many different updates and developments. So it will likely be an amazing time to get in when you're listening to this right now. Here's the deal. Kids don't want to feel like they're dumb, but they have a
Mhm.
lot of questions leaving high school, going into college, or maybe not even going to college. Sometimes their parents are there to help, sometimes not. So with this, you're having a consistent guide to help you navigate these moments in your life. Not only that, get set up beforehand because we have a lot of personal development practices, professional development practices, and we get really into mental health, stress reduction, and organization so that you can become a better problem solver. And really, these are practices that people who are now millionaires and billionaires use on a regular basis. And I'm bringing it to the Gen Z community. So,
Now, is there like an online community that goes with this? So, they A, don't feel like they're alone, but B, can ask questions afterwards?
yeah, so there's a Facebook group for every member. I also have a free Facebook group for those who aren't members but want to come and hang out. It's called the Gen Z and Millennial Hangout. It's on
Nice.
Facebook. In terms of the actual program members, right now it's on Facebook, but I understand there's a lot of young people who don't have Facebook. So in the future, we're going to talk about switching it to a different thing. So I'll keep you updated
Good.
on that.
Now, how do they find this all online? Where do they go?
Go to www.lifeafterhighschool.us. That's LifeAfterHighSchool.us to find out all the information that you need.
Awesome. Well, we are a little over time, but I'm going to give you one more minute. If there's one gold nugget to walk away from with, what would it be?
There's a quote and by Robert Kiyosaki. I might bomb it, but let's see if I remember it. It's winners are not afraid to lose.
Mhm.
Losers are. Failure is a part of the process
Mhm.
of success. Those who avoid failure also avoid success.
Mhm.
Stop worrying about what other people think. Stop worrying about the opinions of others. They are not working in your best favor. You are. Take chances. And if you have any questions along the way, you can reach out to me anytime. 844-218-2979. That's my number. We don't need an email. You can text me. I'm here for you and I can help guide you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Eden. We really appreciate you sharing your heart, sharing your story, sharing this wonderful tool that people can utilize. We really
Oh,
appreciate that.
of course. Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I had fun.
I did too. I always like these. That's why I like it. And I like taking people on the journey behind the passion.
Yeah.
And you've taken us through all of that and really appreciate that today. So thank you. And thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real, where we talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of cjpetersonwrites.com. Until next time.